What's up, everyone? It's back again, Sam from the Footy Gods, to discuss probably one of the most talked about picks in the preseason. Have to be up there with one of the most talked about picks, Nick Daicos. What a fantastic season he had last year. One of the best debut seasons ever. Averaged the 91.3 from every game and busted out scores like 163. So has to be one of the best seasons, debut seasons ever. Started at 193, ended at 500k, went up 310k. That is just ridiculous numbers. So no surprise that he's one of the more popular picks this preseason, sitting in over 40% of teams right now. And we'll go through and discuss what we think about Nick Daicos. And let me tell you, this is a tough one. This is a really tough one. So we'll use that formula like every other player. Does he have the scoring pedigree? Now, being a second-year player, it's hard to know if he has a scoring pedigree. I mean, when you average 91.3 in your first year from every game, you do get some pedigree behind your name. Now, it's not massive scoring pedigree, but it is there. He shows signs, so it is there. Not a big tick. It doesn't have the big scoring pedigree, but it is showing signs. Scoring potential, however, I mean, through the roof. Through the roof. He scored 125 in his fourth game of AFL football. Yeah, and then, had a bit of a down period in the middle parts of the season, but he ended the year really well. So post-bye, even before the bye, had some really nice scores, and then post-bye, he's busted out some really big numbers, 143, 163, and 129 in there as well. So he's got four scores over 120 as a as a first year player, by the way. So 4 scores over 120, and obviously a couple of scores over 143. So the scoring potential, the ceiling is basically through the roof. Through the roof. That's one of the big ticks on Nick Daicos this year, is his scoring potential. Probably one of the highest scoring potential players in the game as a second year player. Obviously his consistency, there's question marks behind his consistency, of course. Second year player, he's gonna busted out some 60s and 50s, 60s. So it had to expect that in his first year. But can he improve on that? You can only just imagine that he's going to improve on his consistency and start to eliminate some of these scores, make these 50s and 60s into 70s and 80s. Therefore, should increase his average quite nicely. So, there's question marks there. But natural growth, you should think that should improve. Trend. So, is he trending upwards? Hard to say with a first-year player, but look at his back end of the year. This is where he busted out his big numbers. So I think purely on the second half of his season, again, he showed signs. He's trended upwards. In his first year of footy, he only got better. He started to really get some big numbers going. So definite signs there. Obviously, his age demographic, he's 20 years old. So he's 20 years old. So he's right in the sky's the limit, really. Yeah, 20 years old, so that's fine. VCC, he could be a VC option if the fixture suits and he plays early. He could be a potential VC option, potential pod VC option. You wouldn't. Yes, he's pretty highly picked, but is he going to be highly VC'd? I don't think so. So there's a bit of a tick there for him, definitely. Job security. So, second year player. There's always maybe slight doubts, but not with this pick. I think big tick on that. He's going to play every game, no problem at all. Injuries, no, big tick. Hasn't had any injuries that I'm aware of in his career so far. Obviously, short career, but gets a tick, obviously. Role is an interesting one. So, where does he play? Does he play through the midfield? Obviously, half-back. Does he rotate through both of them? Hard to know. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think regardless of his role, I don't think that's going to affect his scoring too much. But, if he gets midfield time, he just finds space. So if he's in the midfield more than last year, then that could be a huge tick. Potential for a huge tick if he's playing midfield. even with the halfback role, still a tick for me. No, that's fine. Won't be subbed off, you'd think. Coaching, no, that's fine. We know how the Pies want to play, pretty fast and furious, so he'll be the run and gun player again. Value. Now, this is the question with Daicos. Is there value there? So he's 500k, so he's priced at 90s. Let's look at his break even. 91. So yeah, there's definite value there. If we anticipate maybe 5 to 10 points of growth, there's value there for sure. So we're paying 500k for a 100 average player potentially, which is a win, which is a big win. So there's definite value there. Now the question I have with Daicos and this pick in general, is he a keeper? That's the question we got to ask ourselves. So even if he does, let's say put 5 to 10 points on his average of 91, let's say average is 100. If he goes 95 to 100, let's say he goes 95 to 100. Does that make him a keeper? Maybe, depending on how good our trades have been and what our defensive structure looks like. Maybe, but there could be better options as a keeper. So this is my slight question mark with Daicos. Yes, he looks great on paper, but at his price tag, if there's not big improvement, we're not buying him as a keeper. So are we buying him as a value pick at 500k? It's a bit awkward. It's just a little bit awkward. So slight question mark there in terms of what we plan on doing with him. If he puts 10 points on his average, he will be a keeper. But if he puts 6 points on his average, 7 points on his average, it gets a bit awkward and annoying. So, but again, if that's the biggest problem you've had all year, then that's okay. Not a huge issue. Team structure, I think he slots okay in your team structure. It's a bit awkward. Again, 500k, it's an awkward price, isn't it? So it's not the primo price. We can't necessarily build our defense around him. But we do want to try and slot him in there. So yeah, it's some question marks there. Where does he fit in? Is he your uber primo in defense? Probably not. Do you want to have him sitting at D3? Probably not. It means your defense is probably a bit too deep then. So it's a little bit awkward there. Risk reward. Yeah, there's not a lot of risk involved in the pick with his price and ownership. Almost half the comp owns him. So not huge risks, and the reward is there. So big tick here. The risk reward, the reward outweighs the risk, I think, in this pick, definitely. Let's look at his fixture. So, pretty tough start to the season. Geelong, Port, Richmond, Brisbane. Pretty tough start to the year. 4 games straight off the bat where, it's going to be tough for him. So, that could be a factor. We don't want our 500k plus defender struggling in the first month of the year. It gets easier. St Kilda, Essendon, Adelaide, pretty decent run there. But then, it's a tough draw. His first 10 games is tough. Does this make a question mark behind his pick? Perhaps a slight question mark behind his inclusion in our team. Taggers, that's another one. Do teams try and tag him? Coming off an absolute blistering debut season, our coach is going to try and shut him down. We did see a little bit of it throughout the final series where teams have tried to make him more accountable. Really important cog in the Pies ball movement from half back. So there could be a bit of potential for a forward half tag, definitely, on Nick Daicos. Have to watch his space, but small question mark there. History with the player. Obviously, there's not much history with him. He hasn't burnt anyone yet. He's only in his second year, so that's fine. No issues there. Ownership, like I said, there's half the comp owns him. So there's very little risk in the pick there. And, the ownership being almost 50% of the comp, it's almost like, do we want to miss out on this? Half the comp owns him, and if half the comp own a player with the ceiling through the roof, then we're in big trouble. So his ownership is almost Doesn't quite, but it almost, dictates his inclusion in our side. Purely because of his potential and the amount of coaches that own him, we don't want to miss out. We don't want to miss the boat. So that's a big one. His ownership really, I think, dictates his inclusion. Team, yep, I hate the Pies, but I actually really enjoyed watching them last year. They played a good brand of footy, so that's fine. All good. I think they'll play a similar game style. Want to have the ball in his hands, so that's okay. So going through all of that, it's a really tough one. This is one that I've really scratched my head on this preseason. He's been in my side the whole time. He hasn't left my side at all. But, it's a tough one. I want to see what his role is. If he's playing midfield, or he's playing some midfield, then we just can't not have him because of his ceiling is through the roof. So I think it has to be not a must have, but it's you want to have him. You want to have him in your team. Don't want to miss out. 500k for a player that can go 100 plus per game. I think he can put 5 to 10 points on his average and get up around the 100 plus points per game. And the fact that half the comp's got him, we can't miss out. You're not taking that big of a risk on him at his price and ownership, but the reward's massive. So I think we have to include him in your team. So try and find a way to get him in your team and monitor through the year, through the preseason, what he's going to be doing. So tough one. Maybe a bit of a conversation starter in terms of do I have him, do I not? Maybe a bit divisive, but I think you got to have him. I think you should put him in your team and get a premo above him, and then build your defense around those two. So I hope you enjoyed, guys. Hope he helped you out a little bit. It's a really tough one, but let us know what you think, and let us know if you want any other players to be done. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.